So thank you all for coming. My name is Bill Alford. I'm a faculty member here, and I'm delighted to welcome you to a conversation we're going to have with Melissa Joy Reilly and Michelle Kwan. So first, let me introduce our two guests and then say a little bit about Special Olympics, which is what brought the three of us together, the magic of Special Olympics. So Melissa Joy Reilly is a native of Boxborough, Mass., not too far away. She herself is a Special Olympics athlete who won silver medals in Korea and in Japan at World Games. She was a sergeant driver, global messenger going around the world speaking on behalf of Special Olympics. She works on the staff of State Senator Jamie Eldridge of Boxborough in the Mass State House. And she was a featured speaker at the 50th anniversary celebrations here at Harvard Law School for Special Olympics, our Harvard Law School project on disability with Professor Stein, myself, and Juliet. And Seifang Ming gave a prize to Special Olympics on its 50th anniversary, and she spoke at the Kennedy Library a little later in the fall. Wonderfully, Governor Baker of Massachusetts, when I thanked him a couple of weeks later for coming to that event, said it was hearing Melissa Joy Reilly that makes him glad to be governor. So you crossed the aisles politically there. Right. So, and Michelle Kwan, I've also had the joy of getting to know through Special Olympics. Michelle, as you know, is a 9-time U.S. national skating champion. Was it a 5-time world champion? Like Melissa, twice an Olympic medalist. And like Melissa, Michelle, after her skating career, went on to a career in public service. She was the first public diplomat of the United States appointed by Condoleezza Rice and represented the U.S. around the world also in that respect. And Michelle and I are members of the executive committee of the board of Special Olympics International. So that's how we come together. There's a lot more I could say about both of our guests, honorary degrees and speeches, but I will spare that. A word or two about Special Olympics. You'll hear more about it later and about many other things as well. But since it's what brought us together, I can't resist a plug. So Special Olympics was created 50 years ago. And as an organization, we're centered around sports, but not exclusively sports. So Special Olympics is involved in 32 Olympic sports. And I have about half of them on my necktie here. I'll explain the shoes in a few minutes. And we have literally 100,000 or more competitions every year all around the world. It's different than Paralympics or the Olympics in which Michelle competed. And they range everything from neighborhood events to the Harvard men's ice hockey team having a match every year with the local Special Olympics team, often losing, I should note, to regional games, state games, and world games. And so Michelle and I were just a couple of weeks ago at the World Games in Abu Dhabi, which were the largest, will be the largest sporting event anywhere in the world of any type in this year. And Melissa, as I mentioned before, took part in World Games in Korea and Japan. All this is offered totally free. Nobody ever gets charged for any Special Olympics stuff. But it's not just sports. Sports are wonderful for bringing people together and creating healthy habits and building teamwork and vehicle for determination to express itself. But in addition to sports, we have all kinds of other programs. So we have a program called Healthy Athletes. Over 2 million people have received free medical checkups through this. We've helped with the training of health professionals, 250,000 health professionals to learn about how to work with persons with intellectual disabilities with respect. There are now 6 million athletes participating in Special Olympics. We also have a host of other programs. Again, everything is offered for free, including unified schools. And so you might have read in the newspapers last week about a little bit of controversy in Washington, D.C.
Never.
So the funding involved there was funding for the Unified Schools program. Unified Schools in the United States is 6,500 schools involving more than 300,000 students. And it brings together students both with and without an intellectual disability to study together, to play together, to be on the same team, to learn about bullying, to learn about from each other about tolerance and determination and hard work and more. We're pleased to say that there was such a public outpouring that the funding cuts were taken out of the budget proposal. They weren't ever going to happen anyway because Special Olympics is supported quite widely across the political spectrum. Just a last comment or two there. In a way, this was a blessing in disguise. We got more hits on the Special Olympics webpage than ever before in history. Over 980,000 people posted social media comments about it.
I did not know that.
Yeah, another 50,000 people wrote their member of Congress and so forth and so on. Final quick thing before we begin. It's not just that I'm a bad dresser, although those of you who know me certainly know that. But one of the things through Healthy Athletes was a person out in Bend, Oregon, not Nike, a competitor, has donated thousands upon thousands of pairs of these shoes to Special Olympics athletes. At the World Games, every athlete got a pair of shoes that fit him or her. And so we also, as part of this, started a new program. If you get a pair, as I did, you pay it forward by buying 2 pairs for other athletes who didn't come to the games. So that's the shoes. So anyway, our format, we're going to ask questions of Melissa and Michelle. We won't forget Michelle. Very casual, very relaxed. Youth, athletic career, transition from athletic career, education, government service, and fun, and Special Olympics wrapped up in all this. And we hope Michelle and Melissa will feel free to ask each other questions, ask me questions, ask you questions, and then we'll open it up for the audience to ask whatever you like. So that's the format.
All right.
Okay.
Let's get started.
Let's get started. Okay, so we'll start with Melissa, if we could.
Yes, Professor.
Thank you. So Melissa, could you say a little bit about where you grew up?
Mm-hmm. I live in Boxborough, not Foxborough. It's near Concord, Massachusetts. Concord, Lexington, but it's, yeah.
So, and I understand early on you started swimming with the dolphins,
yes.
Is it? So can you tell us a little bit about your swimming career and how that fit into Special Olympics?
Actually, the swim team, the Dolphins, was my Special Olympics swimming team.
Oh, great. And how old were you when you did that?
When I was 10 years old.
And how many years did you keep swimming?
Actually, with Special Olympics and with swimming, it was like forever.
And it's great exercise, right?
Yes.
Soften the joints. And we're going to get to your medals and skiing soon. But let me ask Michelle.
Sure.
I don't want her to feel left out.
No, I want to ask, when did you hear about Special Olympics, and how did you get involved?
What was the first question again? Sorry.
Like, how did you get involved in Special Olympics? Like, did someone tell you about Special Olympics? Was it a friend of yours from school or from the playground or from?
No, actually, my first involvement with Special Olympics was with my Special Olympics swimming first. Because I heard it from a coach. No, actually, no, my parents had heard it from somewhere, and like a teammate, and they're thinking, how would I get involved? So I went to a pool, a Y in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, where that was the first town where I first started it. I got my feet soaked in it, and and I was hooked on swimming. And then after that, my father was a coach for Special Olympics cycling.
Right.
That's what I did after I came back from Holland, where my mom is from.
Awesome. Hello, Mom.
And then after that, I got into Special Olympics skiing.
How old were you then?
I was 10, around 10.
So I want to look around the room and see how many hands, or raise your hand if you've never been involved with Special Olympics or never been around with somebody with autism or Down syndrome, or everybody's been. Have you ever been involved in Special Olympics or have known? Okay, so I'm always curious, like how does one get involved in Special Olympics? And it's an organization that I'm passionate about, and I don't say it's an organization; it's a family, right? We are family. This is the first time that I've met Melissa, but I just love the organization, the board, the athletes, the volunteers, the people involved. I got involved when I was in my early teens. I was probably like 13, and it was volunteering at an ice rink, and it was that moment when it was kind of what you said, Melissa. Yeah. It's like you get kind of hooked, and I just fell in love, and over the years I've gotten more and more involved. There's this kind of energy, this joy, this passion, and spirit for life that I learned from our athletes, and it's something that started at the backyard of Eunice Kennedy Shriver 50 years ago, but now it's helped so many people, millions of people, 6 million athletes.
And all the rest of us too.
Yeah.
I just, talking about learning lessons about hard work, courage, setting a goal and attaining it, compassion.
There's so many lessons learned in sports, right?
Yes,
like
definitely.
hard work, dedication, falling, alpine skiing, you fall a lot, right?
Sometimes I don't.
You're like, no, I don't.
But you never.
I never in front of millions of people and
Actually, I do fall once in the twice, but doing practices.
During practices.
But not doing the games.
Yep.
And so, when did you start skating, and what drove you to skating?
I started skating at the age of 5 at a local ice rink. It was actually in a mall, and it was an activity that both my sister and my brother did. And they were on the ice, and I was the last one to be allowed to skate. And I begged and begged and begged my mom and dad, like, let me skate. And it was a sport that I just fell in love with. It was both beautiful with the costumes and the glitter and the music, but also the athleticism of going fast, jumping high, and always wanting to improve. And I'm the Chinese zodiac sign of a monkey, so do you know what Chinese sign you are?
No.
Okay, so I'm a monkey, and I'm like known to be like bouncing around all the time. And my parents would be like, we need to like make sure that your energy is focused on a good thing where you're improving, you're learning, it's good for your health, but also, it's a community. And so it was one of those things that I fell in love with and then never looked back.
So we heard a little bit about Melissa's mom. Could you tell us a little bit about Mama Kwan? And
Mama Kwan,
Right.
Mama Sita. So I wouldn't be here, of course, without my mom. You wouldn't all be here. But I think one of the things that I think of my parents, and it's both my mom and dad, is the sacrifices they made to help me get to where I wanted to be. People have asked me over the years, sort of, what sacrifices did you make? You went to bed at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. You trained 7 days a week. You didn't go to movies. You didn't go to prom. No one asked me out, but that's another story.
Their mistake. Their big mistake.
But when I look at my parents, on the other hand, and I think not until you get older do you realize how much they gave you in providing opportunities. Sometimes they don't always agree with you, but they're the ones kind of behind you, supporting you. And I look at Mama Kwan or Papa Kwan, it's like, I just am so thankful and appreciative of all the opportunities and all they've done to help me. And at times I talk about the grit, because it was not easy. Like, there were times when they couldn't make ends meet. They, it was barely being able to put a roof over our head, food in our bellies, and let alone provide this opportunity to go figure skating, which is such a expensive sport. But it was the sport that I chose. But it was one of those that they struggled, but you kind of, sometimes it's a little I say grit because it's like it's never packaged perfectly. I didn't always have the perfect costumes. I didn't always have brand new skates. I didn't always have coaching lessons. I was at the national championships with no coach. I made it all the way to the national championship, but my parents couldn't provide for that, but they could provide, they could give you ice time. So it's a little scrappy. So I think in life, when it gets a little tough, I'm always like, I'm the scrappy one that's like, I'm going to make it happen no matter what. I'm going to make it happen. And I think in life, you kind of have to be, because nothing is presented to you in this kind of serving platter.
Another lesson from sports. And your mother sewed your costumes, right? The sequins?
Yes, she did. Yeah, like I said, I didn't get brand new costumes. Actually, those national championships that I was referring to, actually a skater, a friend of mine, let me borrow her costume. Of course, it wasn't like, it didn't fit well, but it was good enough, right?
Right.
And it didn't matter anyways. I just wanted a chance. That's all.
One last comment about your costumes. Last night in Colbert, they were talking about your sequin when you went to the GLAAD award ball this year. And with a sequined costume? Okay,
so I have to give you, so it was last week, I was at the GLAAD Awards. It's an award for LGBTQ people in media and in the industry. Do you all watch Queer Eye? Okay, the Fab Five. So I was Jonathan Van Ness's date, and I was like, this is going to be fun. It was his birthday. And I was going to be his date on the red carpet. And I had prepared a really nice black dress, really like simple, classic, right? And then he was like, we're going to get all dolled up. We're going to do your hair. We're just going to do glam. So I'm like, that's fabulous. Then I walk in, he's like, no, honey, you can't wear that. And it's like, I don't want to be shiny. I don't want to it's your birthday. It's your awards. You guys got nominated. He pulled something out of the wardrobe and was like, try that on. And if you know Jonathan Van Ness, you know what I'm talking. He's like, try this on, honey. And I'm like, just walked in to say hello. So I'm like, it's a sweater. This is your sweater. It's a sweater that's sparkly and really short. And the first thing that flashed in my mind is something happens on the red carpet, and I get a phone call from my dad, because you go like this, and it's like, oh, okay. But then the stylist, before I said anything, and I was like, oh, let's just do hair and makeup. Before I said anything, stylist goes out, buys a pair, or rents a pair of shoes. I don't know how all that works in the stylist world. Rents a pair of shoes, then got these panty sparkly things. So just in case, it was sparkly too. And I was like, okay, it's his birthday. He wants me to wear sparkles. It's all about him. He got nominated. And I think in my skating career, I've worn shorter skating dresses, and so I went and had sparkly outfit for the GLAAD Awards last week.
So he was talking about you on the Colbert.
Is that what? I didn't see it. Oh, I have to.
I'll send it to you. Yeah, it's great. He was.
Who knew?
Admiring and adoring. So it was all positive.
Off subject. Back to Special Olympics.
Yes. Yeah. So back to Melissa. So Melissa, tell us about your alpine skiing and the World Games in Nagano in Japan, and then almost a decade later, or 7 years later, or something.
2013.
Yeah, great. So maybe tell us about Nagano and also about in Korea, in Pyeongchang.
Sure. Well, first of all, it was a real honor to represent Team USA and myself over there. I felt really honored, and actually, let's say that everybody in Japan and in South Korea, they are so nice. They are so nice. Actually, when I was in Japan, upon arriving, the Japanese military was standing by the entrance, and all the other Team USA athletes were coming out.
I remember.
And they were all clapping.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Yes.
To see it, watching the athletes as they like going to the opening ceremony, similar to the Olympics, and seeing the faces of everybody walking and behind the American flag, right? You're like walking in, it's like, it's what I experienced at the Olympics. And I look at Special Olympics, and it oftentimes makes me emotional because the reaction of our athletes, sometimes our athletes get made fun of, they get bullied, they get excluded. They're never chosen on the team. And here they are in this incredible platform of Special Olympics where they can do what they love and play with their friends. I mean, what does Special Olympics mean to you?
Well, Special Olympics means to me is like the whole package, because Special Olympics is an inspiration for people with intellectual or developmental disabilities. It's so like inspiring to see their smiling faces doing like what they love the most. Like going out there doing a sport and seeing the happy faces, doing the sport and getting their award, and I just love seeing that.
Yeah, no, it's so moving. So in the 2007 Summer World Games in Shanghai, I took part. Were you?
Oh, I was there. Yeah.
Yeah. So why was I not sure? Michelle was there. There were 92,000 people in the stadium in Shanghai, and Hu Jintao, who was then the president of China, and Xi Jinping, who was then the vice president, came to launch the games.
Yeah.
And the best part though was, as you say, was seeing the athletes march in, and the home country is always the last one to march in.
Yeah.
And to see 92,000 people erupt when the Chinese team came in, erupt with pride, the representatives of China, and how many hundreds of millions of people watching this on television in China, it was great.
Yep.
Great. And the games we just came from in Abu Dhabi, over 190 nations.
192, yeah.
192, and just great, and all over. I mean, Israel was included, had a extremely well received.
So the powerful, I think the one image, if I had to take one splitting moment of the World Games in Abu Dhabi, it was the Crown Prince giving a hug to one of our athletes. Wow. And it was a hug where, here's the Crown Prince speaking, and he was about to speak, and then the athlete just, Bill's like, poor Professor Alford.
It was not scripted, right?
No, and he took a moment, gave this biggest embrace to that athlete, and then the athlete was continuing to talk, but that image of that embrace.
Spontaneous.
And when Professor Alford said the determined ones, well, in Abu Dhabi, they changed people with intellectual disabilities. It's no longer disabilities. It's the determined ones. And it's also the year of tolerance. So us as a movement has never been to the Middle East. So I think it's a ripple effect. Yes, the World Games is 10 days long, but it's the impact it has when the Games is way over and there's that legacy of people with intellectual disabilities.
Yeah, I can't pass off one more, mentioning one more anecdote. Yeah. So I went with a couple of our athletes, Loretta Claiborne, who's on the board, and Nyasha from Zimbabwe, who's global messenger, as Melissa was, to meet the Crown Prince at one of his palaces. And folks asked me on the way in, is it okay to take pictures? And I said, probably head of state, probably not, So we got there, and someone said, could we take a selfie? And the Crown Prince said, hey, of course. There's Professor Alford, what does he know? And he really engaged, substantively with Loretta and Nyasha. So back to skiing. So in preparing for your alpine skiing, what was the best part, and what was the hardest part?
The best part is just to go out in the mountain and get some fresh air. And the most of it is getting up early. But it's fun. And worst of it was also the cold and the cold weather.
Yeah. Are you still doing alpine skiing now, or?
I am now, but not right now because
It's Massachusetts, maybe tomorrow.
I don't know about that.
Oh goodness.
So Michelle, for you, with your participation in the Olympics, what was the best part about being a world-class, world-famous skater? What was the hardest part?
Well, I started dreaming of going to the Olympics when I was 7 years old. You know,
Wow.
it was very young, but I think it was watching the Olympics on television, and I remember like it was yesterday, just being glued to the television, and it was watching Brian Boitano at the '88 Olympics. Were you guys born in '80? Oh man! So I was watching it, and I think I made this like huge statement in front of my this grand to mom and dad. Mom and dad, I know what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like I want to be an Olympic figure skater, and they're like, okay. They didn't shoot it down. They were just like, okay, well, we'll go to the ice rink again tomorrow and see how it goes. But I remember fast forward when I was probably 13 years old, somebody had given me an Olympic sticker. And it was like, I framed it. And it was, I don't know, Olympics was always something that like I strive to do and I want to make it. And it was like, I knew how much hard work. That was from the very beginning. And I always pictured it. And I pictured it because my friend had sent this sticker to me. It was Nagano, framed it. And it was the first thing I saw every morning, the last thing I saw when I went to bed. And, I would write a kind of a planner of where I was and where I wanted to be in the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, year. And I had all these goals it kept me organized in some ways. And I think that's how I process things. Sometimes when I say something, it's just one thing, but I'm like, if I write it down, it makes it sort of real. And I always kept a journal also. But when I made it to the Olympics, it was the most emotional moment ever. I was 17. Here I was at the Nagano, was at the opening, and then I skated over the Olympic rings where it was like exactly the ice rink is oval, so it's kind of like this shape, and then Olympic rings. And I think there was another skater on the ice, but I started to like cry, and my coach was like, "Michelle, come here." He's like, "Wake up! Wake up!" And I just was like, so I think that's what the Olympics meant to me. Wearing Team USA and how proud I was, like how proud you are to represent, right? It's that sense of patriotism, all of your dreams and your goals that you wrote down, you stayed focused. It's like, I'm sure all of you who are students here, Goran, I realized that, okay, I have to give a shout out to a friend that I went to school with at Tufts. But you guys came here. It wasn't like, I just suddenly wore a Harvard sweater and then boom, here I am. Like, what, it's one of those things that you really focus on. You dream, but you continue to do it. You take your SATs, you take you take your courses, you do this, you do everything possible. So when people ask me, are you surprised that you made it to the Olympics? I'm like, that would be no, I wasn't surprised. It was like, it's like, finally, right? It's like that sense of accomplishment.
Wow. So Melissa, what are the great lessons you learned from your sports activities, swimming, alpine skiing?
It gives me it gives me confidence and never to give up and go for it.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
As simple. Yeah. Never give up and just go for it.
Yeah.
Those are like key things that you need to learn in sports, and it's falling. She only fell twice, but I fell a lot more than that. And I have bruises and kicks. Don't look. But no, I fell so many times, and I did something. You know how when it was like 60,000, the Malcolm Gladwell, how many hours to succeed? It's like there's 10,000 hours or something like that to be an expert on something. I was thinking it in terms of falling and how many falls I took. over the course of 20 years. And it was, I would say, 7 falls when I was actually quite good, more when I was, let's just average, like 7 falls per session. I had about 4 sessions, so that's 28 falls a day. And it was 6 days to 7 days a week for about 15 years. So when I add that, I'm like, that's how many falls you have to take in order to succeed. Mm-hmm. I see some fellow skaters, they kind of agree. How many falls do you fall, you think, a session? Too many, right? So, yeah, well, back in my day, they didn't have butt pads. Now they have, the butt pads we had before was like, you just put like a sweater or something down. But that's the thing, I think of in the academic sense, like when I went to Fletcher, how many times I got back these like red marks all over my papers. Alan Walkman from Fletcher, he was like, you might want to rewrite this. I mean, those are like the falling in the academic sense and how you guys what you guys deal with every day. You're smiling like, oh, that's painful. But I think there's so many lessons going back to sports that you learn, that I learned, that I applied to succeed outside sports. But what Melissa learns from sports, from Alpine swimming, that you succeed. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, Melissa, you continue to work, right?
Yes.
In government, in public service. So how's that like?
Like, is it an opposite for Special Olympics?
More like how did you get used to having like a real job?
I remember, actually, the first time I was there, I was an intern for 2 years, and then he saw my full potential of how I'm doing in my job or doing in my internship, and then on May 8th of 2013, I officially got a phone call from my state senator saying, Melissa, you have gotten the job as being my office assistant.
That's awesome.
So actually, next month, May, will be marking my 6 years working with him.
Wow.
And I think, as Michelle was saying, the kind of determination and hard work and goal orientation from sports certainly helps one get ready.
Yes.
Great. How about your education? I want to tell a little anecdote if I can.
Yes, please.
Michelle and I have several friends in common, one of whom, Steve Hazen. Mm-hmm. When Michelle was a student at Fletcher, he called me up. He didn't mention anything about Michelle. He and I are friends. We have a lot of common friends. He said, it's a student at Fletcher who wants to take your 1L class. Yes. Could this person do it? And here's Bill being 1, unimaginative, and 2, rule-oriented, rule-compulsive. So I said, no, there are, there's a waiting list, and Harvard Law School students have to get preference. See, we faculty really do care. And Steve said, later, he said, that's too bad, because the person I asked about was Michelle Kwan, and she, thought she might come take your class. And I said, at that point, having no principal, of course she can come. Of course she can come. But Michelle, being deeply principled, and Steve said, no, if it didn't apply for other anonymous students, then we're not going to take advantage of it. So anyway.
I've never heard this story from...
that Steve told me. Yeah. So anyway. So what was it like transitioning, really for both of you, start with Michelle and go to Melissa, transitioning from all this energy and time and concentration on athletics to, kind of post athletic endeavor. Our friend Apollo Ono is writing a book about the transitions. So what was it like for you?
It's not easy. To be honest, I think when I look back at the time that I retired or sort of hung up my skates, it was sort of a panic because I was identified as this skater, period. And it was sort of an identity crisis, trying to find my own voice. It was trying to find a passion outside of something that I really, really loved. And I always when I enter the real world, it's like I always kid with my family. I'm like, I need to find a job where it's kind of like skating, where you walk into the ice rink and it's like, ladies and gentlemen, representing the U.S., Michelle Kwan. The real world was not like that. But so I think I just dove right into going to school, which was very nerve-wracking for me because all the years that I was training, I know that a lot of people were studying and in the library and reading. And so I felt like I was playing catch-up. And when I applied for grad school, that was even a bigger stretch for me. And it was something that I was very scared at because I didn't know if I was capable. But Fletcher is such a great community, and I wish I had been able to take some courses here with you too.
It's not too late.
True. It's never too late. But I was also a lot older because by the time I graduated at University of Denver, I was at UCLA, then transferred to University of Denver, focused on international relations and political science. I was like, I need to learn more. So I applied, got into Fletcher, thank goodness. And it just like opened my world. And another thing that opened my world was I was at the same time appointed as the first public diplomacy envoy by Secretary Condoleezza Rice, which I saw it as an internship. It's funny, do you know who Ellen DeGeneres? So she was appointed also as an envoy. And what she said, when she was at the State Department, she said, well, thank you so much. This is such a big honor and a big responsibility. And she said something like, I think I now have to Google what envoy means. But as I traveled for 6 years, I started to meet people in foreign service, diplomats, and it really created this like passion, something that I didn't know was there and right around the corner. And I think it led me to this path of diplomacy, public service, and then eventually kind of always around periphery of politics. And then I had the opportunity to work for Secretary Clinton and then worked on her presidential campaign. And that's how sort of I segued, and it didn't make any sense at the time, but it still continues to not make sense, but kind of just go with it, go with your heart.
And Melissa, you've been a global messenger.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that, where you traveled and the kinds of ways you represented Special Olympics and American civil society.
First of all, I don't really travel doing when I do any global messaging, but I'm also a keynote speaker. We are talk about my life, my story about my life with Down syndrome. Like I've been invited to go to Seattle. I've been and as a global messenger for Special Olympics, I go to different organizations like banks, coming to Harvard, going to Brandeis, and talking about Special Olympics and what it means to me.
Great. And would you tell us a little bit? We already have some idea, but a little more about what it does mean to you.
Wow. Special Olympics is started out founded by Eunice Kennedy Shriver in the backyard because of her sister. She had a disability, Rosemary. If we didn't have Special Olympics, we didn't have her. And if we didn't have her, we wouldn't have Special Olympics. It's so meaningful for different athletes to go for this sport, to do something that they like, and go out there and have their full potential in their own sport.
Great.
We have a colleague at on the board of Special Olympics who the story of Malaki.
Oh, wow.
You see the different sort of the spectrum of our athletes. Some from the poorest places where, a lot of people have misconceptions of Special Olympics. People sometimes think they have better health care. Sometimes they have, all the attention, where they have tutors or they have private courses, or it's the opposite. What Professor Alford was saying about our healthy athletes, it not only makes opportunities for athletes to have friends and play sports and all the fun things of a community like this, but it also has saved lives. Justin Plunkett, who's also a global ambassador, went through the healthy athlete screening where these doctors volunteer their time and found that like very eye, ear, simple checkups and realized that he has throat cancer. And so Special Olympics saved his life. You hear stories every time at World Games where this athlete needed a hearing aid and the coaches and the parents couldn't afford that, but couldn't understand why when he was on the baseball field, like why he wouldn't respond, or it's because he can't hear. It's like out of this ear. Right. So like lots of things Special Olympics provide that people don't hear about. And it really changes lives by it changes the lives of people who participate as volunteers, but athletes and families. And I hope that you do all like volunteer. Or
So and I'm glad you mentioned the impact on not only our athletes, but everyone else. So when I love going to watch the healthy athletes. It's, as Michelle said, people getting glasses, getting hearing aids, getting dental work, all free. For me, it's very moving, not only to see it in and of itself, but you see doctors from Korea and Japan working together, doctors from Israel and some other Middle Eastern nations that don't always relate, working together, or nurses from Taiwan, nurses from China, and nobody's focused on where they're from or their country or the national politics. It's all this kind of common bond of humanity and learning from our athletes, again, about hard work, determination, generosity of spirit. It's really cool.
Can I add one more thing?
Please.
I'm also on the Special Olympics Board of Directors. I'm one of the two athletes of the Board of Directors to represent the athletes.
Yeah. All our boards have representation from our athlete community. So let me just ask a couple more questions and we open up to the audience.
Sure.
Right. So, so these are my silly questions. So Michelle, I understand there's a wax figurine of you in the, was it Madame Tussauds or something like that?
Yes. If you go to New York and stop by the Madame Tussauds, you'll see me standing there.
So what's it like?
Right.
What's it like to see yourself in wax?
Well, it's funny. This is some years ago, so if I stand next to it, I'm a little bit older, so you can. But when I was first asked, I thought, okay, this is going to be a unique experience. This is going to be. So it was a hotel room, and I stayed in this position for about 3 hours, and they put dots all over my face just to make sure that I get the dimensions, and then called my dentist for a mold, my eye color, the hair. They actually had, my costume was custom made, and they actually had the designer redo the same exact costume. So everything to head to toe was like identical. And when they traveled the wax figurine to the launch or the announcement or unveiling, they actually traveled with the head removed. Yeah. And I walked into, no one told me this, so I walked in and there was my head on the, oh, it was so scary. And it's so scary because it's exactly, it's like a mirror and you get closer and closer and it's the strangest thing. It is, yeah.
That's weird. I once, for Special Olympics, went to China with Arnold Schwarzenegger, which was quite a cultural experience, and Maria, they were then married. And Arnold brought his makeup man with him everywhere, so every morning I got made up. It was so cool.
Oh, wow.
I got quite pampered and spoiled. Anyway, why don't we maybe now open up for questions?
Okay.
Great. So who has questions? Yes, sir. Yes, please. Oh, sorry. Microphone.
Thank you both for being here. My question is about longevity. Your career started right as the Tonya and Nancy scandal happened in skating. And skating had been getting more popular in the US for quite some time, and we were experiencing, the beginning of continued American dominance, especially by the time you hit the scene. But how do you think that burst in popularity ended up affecting your longevity in the sport? Because 4 years later, and then 6 years later, 8 years later, you were still dominating. Do you think you would have stayed in skating that much or that long if that burst hadn't happened?
I think I would have continued to skate. I mean, I would still be skating if it weren't like hard on my body. So in 1994, Nancy Kerrigan, Tonya Harding incident. Now that some of you have probably seen I, Tonya. It was a crazy, crazy incident, tragic. I mean, I was behind Nancy Kerrigan when she was attacked. So Kerrigan, her last name, Kwan, we were in the same warm-up. So I got off the ice and I was putting on my skating guards to protect my blades. We were both getting off at the same time. And Nancy, I was like, she had a lot of fans and it was Olympic year, so there was a camera. And it's different security back then. I mean, pre 9/11, I want to say that I saw Nancy go through this hallway and there was like a little small, thin kind of veil of barely a curtain. And all I heard was, and it was all over the world. We didn't have social media. We didn't have Twitter or Instagram or anything, but it was this visual thing all over the world of her being attacked and her screaming, why me? And I think that those Olympics were like such a crazy time. I was second behind Tonya Harding. And usually is top two that go to the world or the Olympics, or the top three. That year was only two. So the U.S. figure skating decided to bring Tonya and picked Nancy. But I was kind of thrust into, like you said, into the spotlight. I never really thought of longevity as one of the things that I look back, I'm like, yeah, I had many years of like really good times on the ice. But it was more the passion of skating and loving what I do every day. And people always said, oh, it was always about the Olympics. And no, it was always about skating, doing everything and trying to get better and trying to reinvent myself sometimes with different programs. And I always thought it was just fun. So in 2006, unfortunately, I had to, well, take myself out of the competition because I was injured. And I think I would continue to skate. Like, I just love it. I love competition. I love those challenges and obstacles. I enjoyed the exhibition, the shows that you don't have 9 judges staring at you. But I really like being able to push myself to the maximum. And competition was the one thing that I strived. And I think that's why now as I look back, because nothing usually makes sense. Now I know why. I'm like, maybe I'm in politics, maybe it's the competition that I love, which is trouble. But thank you.
Any questions? Don't be shy. Yes, please. Please, yes.
So I guess I have a question for the both of you, which is, we hear a lot about in sports how you can see passion when you watch somebody who is executing or doing a sport that they are passionate about. And I wonder if that's something you've ever thought about in the sense of, or is it just something that when you are passionate, the audience can see it, or is it something that you've actively thought about bringing that kind of emotion and that kind of passion into your sport?
How about you? Passion. I think that's the driving force for me. When I was sort of climbing the ranks, I was very young. So I was 13 when I was at the World Championships. I was 15 when I won my first world title. And I think I began to explore how to kind of channel that passion, if you will. I chose music that meant a lot to me, that had a story behind it. And that's what I loved about it, because each year I could be creative with a short program and a long program. And then I can make costumes. And at one point, it went from like my mom sewing costumes when I was a kid to Vera Wang making my costumes. So it was like this creative process where it was passion, but also art / athletic / everything. And I think about a lot of like, if it's very dry, if it's not something that you're not crazy about, then it's not going to be for you. And I think when what I learned in sports and what I learned in figure skating is like that drive, that passion, that thing that I had there is something that I want to replicate in other areas. So yeah, your question is right on. Passion is something that I think is the one driving force for me.
Melissa, what do you think about passion in your sport?
In every sport that I competed in, my passion is to go, just to do it and try to get it done and just go for it.
And a lot of hard work. Yeah.
And a lot of hard work.
Yes, yesterday in the Sports Law Conference, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, who was a famous NBA player before 20 years before Colin Kaepernick protested the national anthem, talked about what it was like as a kid he had Tourette's syndrome, and how he would go and shoot, thousands of baskets every day, imagining the team from the other side, because there weren't other kids, and how to weave around them. Mm-hmm. So first time he got to charge the basket against Michael Jordan. It wasn't hard because he had practiced so much. That passion, hard work, drive. Other questions?
Thank you so much both for being here. I have a question for both of you as well. Michelle, I had the chance to watch you growing up, but Melissa, having heard your story also now, I'm wondering, both of you have had long careers, have gone to multiple Olympic Games, multiple World Games. At any point throughout that time, did you ever feel like you were ready to quit or ready to give up? And if so, what did you tell yourself in that situation? What was it that got you past that and got you to keep going, to go to the next competition, to go to the next World Games, the next Olympics, the next Nationals?
I like Melissa's answer about like early mornings, working hard, and some moments where you doubt yourself and you don't think there's a way to either attain your goal, you just kind of feel helpless. Or times where you just want to throw your skates like across the room. Where, so I've experienced many in many occasions, sometimes more in one year than others. But I think when I have those moments where I just want to give up, and you take all the fun out of it, because when you look at the season of an athlete, you skate almost every day, like six days a week, 7 days a week when I could physically do it, but later on it was like 6 days a week. It gets really tiring. And I know that, yes, you're at one of the best schools, you're excited, when you go home for Christmas or holidays and you're like, I'm at Harvard, and it sounds so like, that's awesome, and everyone's super pumped for you, but grinding every day is not that fun. And there are moments when you're like, oh, I just don't want to do this anymore. I always go back to finding that passion, what drove me in the beginning, that inspiration, and I didn't have to look very far. It was always looking at a young skater getting on the ice for the very first time. It was like seeing her like barely tying up her skate and running to the ice surface, and like not even knowing how to skate. And then it makes me reflect back about my career, and it inspired me. I didn't look at professional skaters. I looked at this little girl, so excited. And that was me when I was 5 years old. So that's the thing. Sometimes you kind of have to pull yourself back to what made you start the journey of this difficult 3 years or 4 years or wherever you are in your life, that you like go back to the beginning and recreate, and also remind yourself, what is it that's fun? What is it that's hard? Are these challenges impossible, or can you work through them? And sometimes it's like one step in front of another. Some days it's like that early morning, right? The alarm clock say, oh, just go back to sleep. But if you can get out of bed, if you make breakfast, if you can get into the car, if you make it to the library, you're like almost there, right? So sometimes it is more of a struggle, and I feel like I should create a meme that's like, it's of going onto the ice. It's not like every day you're going, I am gonna skate 5 hours a day, 5 hours today, and it's that grind that sometimes can really be that anchor that doesn't allow you to go. But yeah, I think you just have to kind of remind yourself. You have to find things, little secrets that work for you. Whether it's seeing that little girl or seeing another colleague of yours studying and being like, or taking that moment to take a walk. Find that trigger where you're like, and I think as I get older, I realize what those triggers are that make me move faster.
Also, what drove you during your athletic career when it was tough, when it wasn't all pleasant? What kept you going?
Just my heart, because my heart says just to go for it and look your best. And actually, I am not a failure. I'm not a quitter. I don't give up. But sometimes when I'm in the starting gate, about to go, my stomach gives me like little butterflies. Like, I can't do this. I can't. I have to back out. But no, I have to do it. Do it.
And I'd like when she said do your best, right? Like I hear, and it could be any professional athlete, the Olympics, and the NFL, NHL, WNBA, any professional athlete. You hear these athletes go, I was in the zone. I just want to do my best. Work hard, do my best. It's very simple, actually, right? Yeah. It's like you work hard, you have no regrets. If you don't prepare for an exam or a presentation, you're going to have regrets because you're going to feel uncomfortable and you're not going to be confident. And I love when people say, you look so confident out there. Like, I wouldn't be confident if I had not practiced, not trained, not, put in the work. But I know that I put in my work. I know that that voice still is there going like, I can't do it, but I'm going to do it. So sometimes it's that lean in, but knowing that you come prepared and you know that you're capable. And if it doesn't go your way, and many times it didn't for me, that you're like, that's too bad. But you know what? I tried,
Can I add one more thing,
Please,
Professor?
please.
Actually, in Special Olympics, like during the opening ceremonies, they always have an athlete oath. Mm-hmm. So they can always come prepared. And the oath is, let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt.
And that's from ancient Greece.
Yes.
Yeah. And
You know that.
Mrs. Shriver would certainly encourage people to think that. Well, it's hardly the same as your athletic accomplishment. I can't resist mentioning. So one of my colleagues on our faculty, who's one of the most popular teachers, I won't mention his name, tells me that before every large class, he gets butterflies and feels a little nauseous. And he said to me, if I stopped feeling that way, I'd stop teaching.
Yep.
So I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, sort of the academic equivalent of, taking it seriously and pushing yourself and not being complacent.
And do things that scare you.
Yeah. Get up in front of a lot of smart people and get hard questions, right? Any more questions? Time for a few more.
Michelle, you said you started skating when you were 7 years old. So between 7 and 10, did your parents, before you found out that you were going to be that good, did they dissuade you to go, say, no, this is not going to work out? Or did they blindly just said, go for it, regardless of what would happen?
So I started skating at 5, got more serious at 7, more serious at 7. I think there were moments in my career, I wouldn't say in this hobby, where my parents were pretty hard on me because there were times when, like I said, they couldn't make ends meet, and when you look at figure skating, skating boots are, I got used ones, but they were like a couple $100s, and I had to get new ones every year. Costumes cost a lot of money. Flying coaches to some competition cost money. There were times when my parents were really harsh in terms of lessons. I remember, I'll give you a couple of lessons, like what they told me was, well, you're late getting on the ice. I would be 2 minutes, 5 minutes late, and my coach is waiting. And he was like, I pay, let's say it's $60 for an hour. Each minute is $5. And he was like adding all these numbers for me. And knowing my parents had to juggle multiple jobs and do this in order for us to skate, he's like, why don't you quit skating? I'll give you $120 every day. I mean, this is an 11-year-old if you don't skate. Like, it's those like numbers and knowing that my grandparents, I think it was more my grandparents giving a hard time to my parents, going like, do you realize how much money you're spending on Karen's, my sister, and my brother, and like in sports? That's so, like, it really is like blunt, like stupid. You need to invest better, and you're putting the family in this kind of. So I think those are lessons. They weren't hard on me and going like, you gotta compare, you gotta. It was more like finding your drive within and finding that passion. Like there were times when I was 7 years old or 8 years old when I told my parents, I'm like, I wanna quit. Like, it's so hard, I don't wanna do it, I quit. So my dad, this is 7 or 8 years old. My dad took the skates, you wanna quit? He threw the skates in the trash can. And I was like, oh. He's like, you said you want to quit, so don't waste my time, don't waste anybody's time. I'm paying a lot of money for this, so you're the one that wants to be here, and we're here. And so, of course, I was like, I don't want to skate anymore anyways, bye. And then huff puff, like just walked away. And then he was very serious. My sister was skating, and I didn't get to, he threw my skates away. It wasn't like he was going to buy new skates. Then days later, I was like, but Dad, I want to go skating. He was like, well, I didn't throw your skates away. He's like, but I never want you to hear, I want to quit. If this is what you want to do, it's what you want to do. And that's a 7, 8-year-old, that's a hard lesson, and I'm wondering maybe, I don't know. I think that was something that like made me realize how much money they're putting into it, how many sacrifices they're making, and then that word, I quit, and that's the hard lessons, I think, in sports, but also in the dynamics of my family and dynamics. So it's a lot. I'll probably be getting a lot of therapy in the future, but.
And more than $60. Other questions? These are great questions. Others? Juliet over here. Thank you.
Hi. I was wondering, going off of what you said about the stories that we don't hear from the Special Olympics, such as like the child getting the hearing aid or the glasses, I was thinking more on like a publicity, and how do we get those stories out so people see the good that's being done behind the sport? Like, I think we think about the sport, but we don't think about what it's opening up for a child, whether it be their story being told or their family having access to something they might not have. How do we change that dialogue from, oh, the child won, to this also happened, and because of the sports, we got so much farther?
We have great partnerships. Luckily, we have Special Olympics partnered with ESPN. So the World Games, the one in Abu Dhabi, was witnessed by a lot of people. But you're absolutely right. I mean, when an incident or something like what happened last week, where Special Olympics become, there's a highlight, it's great because it brings the awareness of what this organization does and how many people it affects. We can't build a more inclusive society if we don't have the resources to bring people with intellectual disabilities and without playing together in the same playing field, impacting 6,500 schools, people with, as Bill mentioned, at schools and and making that impact. But I know you probably have, we could be here all day, right? Talking about how we can highlight it. I don't know. It's
So I think last week, ironically, was a blessing in disguise because Tim Shriver, who's the chair and who's quite an extraordinary and incredibly articulate person, got unprecedented amount of airtime to explain what Special Olympics is. And I think to explain maybe most importantly, maybe as he would put it, in his mother's generation, it was sort of for the athletes, but now it's more from the athletes in a time of enormous divisiveness in our country and so many other countries around the world. Our athletes, as I was saying earlier with the doctors, bridge differences, don't see differences, talk about compassion. I mean, again and again at games, there's a race and somebody falls, often the other runners will stop or help that person up. I mean, it's very different than a lot of other kind of athletic endeavor in that sense. But I think you're right. I mean, it's a challenge to kind of break through and publicize, but it's an extraordinary amount of good things. The ESPN 50 for 50, I think it's called. They're going to do 50 short videos for Special Olympics.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's not cool.
Yeah.
And the first, just mentioned quickly, it illustrates the point about giving. First one is you don't quite know at the beginning who the figure is. It's a young boy from the Cameroons who ends up in Italy.
Wow.
And you think, well, he's probably a Special Olympics athlete, but it turns out, no, he's a refugee from a country in turmoil who then is taken in, included by a group of it's a true story, a group of Special Olympics athletes. They invite him to be a part of their team. Other teams at his school weren't so interested in including somebody who was different from outside. So kind of the lesson, again, true story, is the kind of inclusiveness and friendship that goes. But your point's a really good one. I think it's a challenge for us how to publicize and how to publicize in a way that, when people say to me, "Oh, Bill, you work with Special Olympics as a volunteer, isn't that nice?" I actually kind of cringe. It's not nice. I love doing it. I don't think I could do my day job as much as I adore being at Harvard Law School. My mother is proud of me being here. But I don't think I could do it without the lessons I learned, the sort of humanizing dimension of Special Olympics, the friends I've made, to know Melissa, to know Michelle, and loads of other people like that.
And it is. We have impacted 6 million lives through Special Olympics. But think of all those stories that the athletes that don't have an opportunity to play and are still excluded. So it's important to figure out that it is something that, as a board member, we're trying to figure out. And one of the things that we do, have this incredible platform of the World Games where we have 192 countries represented. And those stories get taken back to countries like Saudi Arabia, places where they're like, what is Special Olympics? I mean, here in Canada, it's 50 years of Special Olympics. People know, and it's hard. Sometimes we get confused with Paralympics with people with physical disabilities, and so it's still a challenge for us. And being able to tell those stories and whenever we get a chance to do that, either social media or getting more people involved, and so it's a good question.
Maybe take one or two last questions, then we'll stop and we can chat informally.
This one here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just on the subject of social media and publicity, I know Humans of New York has been featuring Olympians from the Special Olympic Games in Abu Dhabi, so that's been really cool to see. But a lot of those stories have focused on mentors and teachers that helped the athletes. Can you guys both talk about mentors or teachers that have been really influential in your journey?
You can go first. I'll think about it.
Over the years, I've had incredible mentors, role models. Well, my mom and my dad being incredible role models for me growing up. But in the sport of figure skating, it was always Brian Boitano. It was like I watched the 1988 Olympics and really admired him. He made me kind of have that dream. I want to go to the Olympics. And then later on, he became a mentor and a dear friend of mine. And I had the opportunity to be on the road with him, travel places, skate on Champions on Ice for many years. But then as I transitioned, I made a lot of incredible, I had mentors, role models. Secretary Condoleezza Rice is an incredible mentor and a friend of mine, and golf buddy. But it's amazing when people think about networking, or there's such a negative term, a negative feeling towards networking. And I think it's like taking that opportunity to meet people that you really connect with. And I happened to be at the state dinner with President Hu Jintao, President Bush at the time, and being at the head table with Secretary Condoleezza Rice, and she was sitting on the other side, so I didn't really get a chance to talk to her much, but I did talk to her about going to school at University of Denver, as well as being a skater. She used to be a pianist and a skater, and she continues to be a pianist, and I think she sometimes gets on the ice. And we really connected, and I don't know what provoked me to say this, but I was like, if there's anything I could do, I just wanted to get to know her more. I was hoping that she'd just give me a call or something. And it happened like that, where later on, I was appointed as the first public diplomacy envoy and had a chance to get to know her, ask for her advice as I was, transitioning into other areas. And then as I was asking her about her advice about going to grad school, and she was really excited when I said that. She was like, I never, that's wonderful. And she gave me such incredible experience, knowledge, but connected in a way. So I encourage people to continue to network, continue to meet people, ask questions, have the audacity to be like, can I get to know you? Can you help me? Can I stay in touch? It's never bad. I can name a lot more people, but my professor at Fletcher, he was somebody that I went to office hours, and I'm the type of person that's more of an introvert. I think PDP, or the Professional Development Program on Fridays, it really opened my eyes to okay, I'm an introvert, I have to ask questions, so I have to engage, and I have to, because as a skater, everything came to me, and suddenly now I was having to really step out of my comfort zone, ask for advice, ask my mentors, and I was very fortunate that I had incredible men and women to support me and guide me and continue to guide me.
And Melissa, how about mentors, teachers for you, models?
I have had several teachers in high school. Actually, I had a love for Shakespeare, and there was a teacher who I really liked, and he taught English. So it was all the English books, like Shakespeare. Okay, what else? The Crucible, and all the literature books. He gave me a love for reading, and then my family is also important. And actually, my role model is my older sister, because she's the one who I usually look up to. And then also my nephews. I can't live my life without my nephews and my niece.
Wow. I think that's probably a really good point at which to conclude our formal session. What a great account. So why don't we do this? We'll conclude our formal session, and maybe we can hang around for some more informal conversation for a bit. But I want to thank Melissa, and I want to thank Michelle, and thank Melissa's mom, and in absentia, Mama Kwan, and Mama Kwan. And Juliet Boulder, who put it all together.
Yes, thank you, Juliet. Thanks, everybody.